The deadliest waters on Earth, Drake Passage. Only two places on Earth can make experienced sea captains alter their routes or abandon ship. While the Bermuda Triangle remains largely mythical, the Drake Passage is a 600-mile reality where 30-foot waves are considered calm. As one veteran captain remarked, "It's where the ocean shows who's really in charge." This notorious stretch between South America and Antarctica has terrified sailors for 5 centuries. Captain James Cook called it the most desolate place on Earth. Even with today's advanced vessels and technology, the passage continues to claim ships. What creates this maritime nightmare? The answer combines geography, physics, and global climate patterns that we're about to explore. The modern crisis. Research vessel caught in storm. The RRS Sir David Attenborough pitches violently as it battles through the notorious Drake Passage in January 2024. The ship's communication system crackles to life. Research vessel Sir David Attenborough requesting weather update. Current position southeast Drake Passage en route to Weddell Sea. The response comes through broken and distorted. All vessels in Drake Passage, severe storm warning. Wind speeds expected to reach hurricane force within next 6 hours. On board, Dr. Karen Haywood and her team of oceanographers had set out from Punta Arenas just 24 hours earlier on what should have been a routine climate research expedition. Their mission: to collect critical data on changing ocean temperatures and current patterns. Instead, they now find themselves at the mercy of one of the most volatile waterways on the planet. "We were monitoring the weather systems, of course," Haywood would later recall, "but the speed with which conditions deteriorated caught even our experienced captain off guard. The morning had begun with manageable swells. By midday, the ship's meteorologist delivered the news no one wanted to hear. A massive low-pressure system was intensifying directly in their path, far faster than forecast models had predicted. What had appeared as a navigable weather window had slammed shut with alarming speed. Within hours, wind speeds accelerate past 55 miles per hour, pushing into hurricane-force territory. The sophisticated 400-foot vessel groans under the strain as wave heights climb toward 30 feet. The ship's captain's voice remains steady but urgent over the intercom. All scientific operations are suspended. Secure all equipment immediately. This is not a drill. In the primary research laboratory, specialized sampling equipment worth millions breaks free from its moorings despite careful preparation. A centrifuge tears loose from its bolted position, crashing across the floor. The shattering glass and acrid smell of spilled chemicals fill the air as two researchers narrowly avoid serious injury, diving clear as containers explode across the pitching deck. The angle of pitch was so severe at times that moving through the corridors became nearly impossible, remembers marine biologist Dr. Thomas Reynolds. "We were essentially climbing vertical walls one moment, then being thrown against the ceiling the next." The constant thunder of waves battering the hull creates a psychological torment matching the physical danger. In their cabins, crew members follow emergency protocols, strapping themselves into bunks while the ship's sophisticated stabilization systems strain beyond specifications. The cacophony of metallic groans and human gasps fills every compartment as unsecured objects become dangerous projectiles. On the bridge, Captain Malcolm Forster maintains composure while facing deteriorating conditions. Visibility drops to near zero as driving rain and sea spray envelope the vessel. As instrumental navigation fails, the captain's weathered hands grip the console, his experience becoming their most reliable guide. "Position uncertain," notes the captain's log at 2,100 hours. "Instrumental navigation compromised," relying on inertial systems and experience. The first true moment of crisis arrives just after midnight. Through the darkness looms a massive wave approaching from starboard, dramatically exceeding the already punishing sea state, the dreaded rogue wave phenomenon that has claimed countless vessels throughout maritime history. Brace for impact. The warning barely leaves the first officer's lips before the wall of water strikes. The wave strikes with catastrophic force. One window cracks but holds. a testament to modern engineering. Seawater forces its way through seal points, cascading over sensitive navigational electronics. Sparks fly from a communications console as circuits short out. The ship momentarily loses power before backup systems engage, casting the bridge in an eerie emergency glow that illuminates the crew's tense faces. As dawn breaks, Captain Forster faces an impossible choice. The ship's position puts them near the midpoint of the Drake Passage, too far to turn back toward South America, yet still days from the relative shelter of Antarctic waters. Continuing forward means facing the worst of the storm head-on, while turning the massive vessel risks, exposing their broadside to potentially capsizing waves. After studying the remaining meteorological data, he finally orders, "Adjust course. 10 degrees southeast. We'll attempt to skirt the system's core. The next 12 hours will determine everyone's fate." As communication becomes increasingly sporadic, one researcher is heard saying in footage later recovered, "If we don't make it through this, at least the data recorders will survive. Someone will learn something from our work, even if we don't make it back to tell them." What makes this passage so treacherous, even in our age of advanced maritime technology? The answer lies in a perfect confluence of factors, creating Earth's most consistently dangerous body of water. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current, our planet's most powerful ocean current, channels through this relatively narrow 600-mile strait. This massive flow transports more than 150 million cubic meters of water per second, over 100 times the combined flow of all the world's rivers. This current meets no land resistance elsewhere in its path around Antarctica, accelerating unchecked until it squeezes through the bottleneck between the Antarctic Peninsula and South America's Cape Horn. Racing waters encountering the dramatically rising seabed are forced upward, creating towering waves even in mild weather. Unimpeded global winds circle the Antarctic continent, gathering speed across thousands of miles of open ocean before concentrating through this same geographic channel. When storm systems form, they develop unhindered by land masses that would weaken them elsewhere on Earth. The 2010 incident involving the tourist vessel Clelia II demonstrates this vulnerability. Returning to Ushuaia, the ship encountered 30-foot waves with sustained 55 miles per hour winds. A wave striking the bridge broke a window, disabling communications and damaging one engine. Only through assistance from another vessel did the Clelia II reach port safely. The Drake Passage features depths averaging 11,000 feet, with areas plunging beyond 15,600 feet. These abyssal waters create complex underwater dynamics, contributing to surface chaos. The stark temperature difference between Antarctic waters and those from South America generates atmospheric instability, frequently spawning cyclonic storms with little warning. As for the Sir David Attenborough and its crew of scientists, their story becomes another chapter in the long history of human determination in the face of the Drake Passage's fury. The ship's advanced design, the crew's training, and perhaps some measure of fortune allow them to navigate through the worst of the storm system. Geographic perfect storm. Why here? Behind every wave that threatened the Sir David Attenborough's mission lies a hidden global machine. When satellite imagery reveals the Drake Passage from above, an alarming pattern emerges. The only place on Earth where the world's most powerful ocean current gets squeezed through a geographic funnel with nowhere to go but up. The Drake Passage sits at what oceanographers call a perfect convergence point, where the Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern Oceans collide. Here, three massive oceanic systems, each with different temperatures, salinities, and movement patterns, violently confront each other in a relatively narrow channel, like three powerful rivers forced through a single canyon. What makes the Drake Passage uniquely dangerous is this bottleneck effect, explains Dr. Elizabeth Thornton, senior oceanographer at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Imagine taking the water from three massive oceans and forcing it through a geographic funnel just 600 miles wide. There's simply nowhere for all that energy to go except upward. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current, or ACC, is the primary engine driving this marine chaos. Moving approximately 150 million cubic meters of water every second, It dwarfs all other ocean currents on Earth. To put this in perspective, the ACC transports more than 150 times the combined flow of all the world's rivers. This massive volume of water circles Antarctica completely uninterrupted, except at the Drake Passage. When this enormous current reaches the Drake Passage, it encounters a geographic restriction unlike anywhere else on its circular journey. The distance between Cape Horn at South America's tip and the Antarctic Peninsula creates a bathymetric bottleneck, an underwater geographical feature that funnels the current into a concentrated stream. The underwater topography in the passage is just as important as what we see above the surface, Dr. Thornton continues. The average depth here is about 11,000 feet, but it's not a smooth basin. There are underwater ridges, plateaus, and canyons that the current must navigate. These submerged features create another layer of turbulence. As the ACC collides with the underwater landscape, it generates massive internal waves and turbulent mixing that propagate upward. Some areas of the passage plunge beyond 15,600 feet deep, creating dramatic underwater cliffs that further disrupt the current's flow. Temperature differences compound these geographic challenges. Thermal imaging reveals a dramatic gradient where Antarctic waters at approximately 28 degrees Fahrenheit minus 2.2 degrees Celsius collide with relative warmer South American waters reaching up to 50 degrees Fahrenheit 10 degrees Celsius. This temperature disparity creates fundamentally unstable water columns, similar to how cold and warm air masses create turbulence when they meet in the atmosphere. When you have cold, dense water meeting warmer water in such a turbulent environment, you create perfect conditions for storm intensification, explains Dr. Victor Chen, climate physicist at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. These temperature differentials effectively provide fuel for atmospheric disturbances, which is why storm systems can develop so rapidly here. The ACC's forced upwelling through this narrow channel, combined with the temperature differences, generates a permanently unstable atmospheric condition directly above the passage. Further intensifying these conditions is the absence of land masses to impede wind patterns. In the band of latitudes known as the Roaring Forties and Furious Fifties, global winds can accelerate uninterrupted around the entire planet before slamming into the Drake Passage. This is the only place on Earth where winds can accelerate uninterrupted around the entire globe, notes Dr. Chen. By the time these winds reach the Drake Passage, they've had thousands of miles to build energy and velocity. Then they encounter the unstable air created by the oceanic conditions below. The combination of these factors, compressed ocean currents, complex underwater topography, temperature differentials, and unimpeded global winds, creates what scientists call a perfect oceanographic storm. When these forces align, they generate the infamous waves that have terrified sailors for centuries. This upward force, combined with the surface wind energy, creates the towering wave patterns that can reach heights of 30 feet or more during storm conditions. Like water rushing through a garden hose when you partially block the opening, the ACC surges upward with increased pressure and energy as it's forced through the passage. The Drake Passage also serves as one of Earth's primary mixing zones, where deep water rises to the surface and surface water sinks to the depths. This vertical circulation distributes heat, nutrients, and dissolved gases throughout the world's oceans, making it critically important for global climate regulation. We often describe the ACC and the Drake Passage as Earth's ocean mixer, says Dr. Chen. This mixing helps regulate temperatures and nutrient distribution throughout all the world's oceans. The interaction between the ACC and the seabed creates additional turbulence through topographic steering. As the current navigates over and around underwater ridges and valleys, it generates additional internal waves and eddies that propagate upward, contributing to chaotic surface conditions. This dynamic environment explains why rogue waves, enormous, unpredictable swells, are particularly common in the Drake Passage. These waves form when multiple wave patterns temporarily align and combine their energy. Rogue waves aren't random accidents. They're the statistical inevitability of chaotic wave systems interacting, notes Dr. Chen. In the Drake Passage, you have so many different forces creating wave patterns that rogue wave formation becomes much more likely. Even with advanced ship design and sophisticated weather forecasting, these concentrated forces remain formidable. Modern vessels must contend with the same fundamental physical challenges that have threatened ships since the earliest days of exploration. What's humbling about the Drake Passage is that despite all our technological advances, we can't change the basic physics, Dr. Thornton reflects. We can build better ships and predict conditions more accurately, but we can't alter the fact that an enormous volume of water is being forced through a relatively narrow channel. Historical nightmare. Early explorers. While modern ships struggle against the Drake Passage's fury, they have the advantage of satellite imagery, advanced weather forecasting, and reinforced hulls. But imagine facing these same waters in nothing but a wooden sailing vessel with no modern technology to guide you. The Drake Passage has claimed over 800 ships and 20,000 sailors throughout history, a maritime graveyard created when sailors ventured blindly into one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. Historical records reveal the passage's true deadliness. During the Age of Sail, nearly 1 in 5 vessels that attempted to cross these waters vanished completely. Ships would enter the passage and simply disappear, leaving no wreckage, no survivors, and no clues to their fate. Families and shipping companies would wait months or years for word of their vessels, only to eventually accept that the Drake had claimed another victim. Spanish explorer Francisco de Haux encountered these treacherous waters in 1525. His expedition, sailing south from the Strait of Magellan, had no intention of discovering this deadly passage. The region's unpredictable winds seized his ship, dragging it southward into uncharted territory. Haux and his crew faced towering waves that threatened to shatter their wooden vessel with each impact. The Spanish would later call this terrifying stretch Mar de Haux, in recognition of his inadvertent discovery. The wooden ships of the 16th century proved woefully inadequate when confronted with the Drake Passage's might. Constructed primarily of oak and pine, these vessels lacked the structural reinforcements needed to withstand such conditions. Their hulls, suitable for calmer European waters, could not absorb the pounding of 50-foot waves. When struck broadside, their wooden frames would flex beyond capacity, causing seams to split and water to pour in rapidly. Sir Francis Drake's 1578 voyage further cemented the passage's reputation as a maritime nightmare. Drake's ship was violently blown off course during an attempted journey through the Strait of Magellan. This unplanned detour confirmed the existence of an open water route south of the continent, but at tremendous risk. The passage would eventually bear Drake's name, though he was neither the first to discover it nor the first to successfully navigate it. Dutch navigator Willem Schouten deliberately set out in 1616 to find an alternative route around South America. His documented journey through the passage came at a devastating cost. His expedition began with multiple vessels, but concluded with just one remaining ship and fewer than half his original crew. The others perished in the turbulent waters. Their bodies never recovered. Journal entries from surviving ships document the horrors faced by early mariners. One captain wrote, "The sky and sea merged into one dark mass. Waves higher than our mainmast crashed over our decks with such force that 3 men were swept overboard in an instant. We could do nothing but watch them disappear." Another described encountering massive ice floes. "The ice caught us between its jaws like a beast with its prey. The terrible cracking of our hull timbers sounded like the screams of the ship itself." The harrowing story of HMS Wager in 1741 illustrates the passage's mercilessness. Part of a British naval expedition, the Wager was completely unprepared for what awaited. When violent storms shattered her rudder, the ship became uncontrollable, eventually wrecking on a desolate island off Chile's coast. Of the original 160 crew members, only 36 would ultimately survive. The Wager's survivors faced months of unimaginable hardship. With winter approaching and supplies dwindling, the stranded sailors split into factions. Some remained with the captain, while others took the ship's longboat and attempted to navigate back through the passage. Those who stayed behind faced starvation so severe that instances of cannibalism were reported. The mutineers who left constructed makeshift additions to their small boat, desperately trying to create a vessel capable of withstanding the Drake's punishment. A handful of mutineers eventually reached civilization after months at sea. Their accounts led to changes in British naval law regarding shipwrecks and command during disasters. The Wager incident became so notorious that sailors would speak of it in hushed tones decades later, using it as the ultimate cautionary tale about the Drake Passage's deadly potential. The Passage's reputation became so feared that captains would add thousands of miles to their journeys just to avoid it. Navigation charts from the 18th and 19th centuries reveal shipping routes that deliberately took the longer path around the Cape of Good Hope rather than risk the shorter Drake Passage route. This detour could add months to a voyage, yet captains considered it a reasonable price for survival. The absence of nearby land to break up the flow of water, one naval historian noted, combined with the powerful Antarctic Circumpolar Current, created conditions unlike anything experienced in the Northern Hemisphere. Ships faced not only the threat of capsizing, but also the constant danger of icebergs appearing suddenly through the fog, giving crews mere seconds to attempt evasive maneuvers. The introduction of steam power in the 19th century marked the first significant technological advancement against the Passage's deadly conditions. Steam vessels could maintain headway against contrary winds and currents that would have left sailing ships helpless. This innovation reduced crossing times from weeks to days and provided captains with unprecedented maneuverability. Yet even with steam power, the Drake Passage remained lethally dangerous. Early steamships, with their paddle wheels and primitive engines, still suffered terribly. Engines would fail when water flooded boiler rooms, paddle wheels would break when smashed by waves, and hulls would crack under the constant battering. Before the Panama Canal opened in 1914, ships transporting goods between the Atlantic and Pacific had little choice but to brave these waters or take the much longer route around Africa. This economic pressure forced countless captains to risk the passage despite its well-documented dangers. For those who survived shipwrecks, their ordeal was often just beginning. The subantarctic islands offered little food or shelter. Survivors might spend years stranded, subsisting on seabirds, seal meat, and salvaged provisions. When these supplies ran out, many constructed crude boats from shipwreck remains, preferring to risk death at sea rather than face starvation. These improvised escape attempts rarely succeeded, contributing to the Passage's grim legacy, a testament to both nature's power and humanity's determination to challenge it. Shackleton's Gamble, the most famous survival story. Throughout history, sailors have found themselves at the mercy of the Drake Passage, but none faced a more calculated, desperate gamble than Ernest Shackleton in 1914. While most maritime disaster stories begin with ships being caught unaware by the Passage's fury, Shackleton's tale is remarkable because he deliberately chose to launch into these treacherous waters in a vessel that conventional wisdom deemed wholly inadequate, a modified lifeboat barely 22 feet long. The extraordinary saga began far from the Drake Passage itself. In 1914, Shackleton's expedition ship Endurance became hopelessly trapped in pack ice of the Weddell Sea before they even reached their intended destination. For months, the crew watched helplessly as their vessel was slowly crushed by the relentless pressure of the surrounding ice. This catastrophic beginning forced the 28-man crew to abandon ship and establish a precarious camp on the drifting ice floes. What followed was a prolonged battle against the elements as they drifted northward on the ice. When the deteriorating ice conditions threatened to split beneath their feet, Shackleton made the fateful decision that would either save his men or condemn them to death in one of Earth's most inhospitable environments. Their only chance for survival lay in reaching help, and the nearest potential rescue point was South Georgia Island, some 800 miles away across the infamous Drake Passage. Shackleton's solution was audacious in its desperation. He selected the James Caird, one of the ship's lifeboats, for a journey that would challenge even purpose-built vessels. This tiny 22-foot craft represented their only lifeline to civilization. The plan was unprecedented. No vessel so small had ever successfully crossed the Drake Passage, and experienced mariners considered the attempt virtual suicide. Shackleton modified the lifeboat by adding weight to the keel and constructing a makeshift partial deck from salvaged Endurance materials. critical adaptations that would prove essential for survival in the unforgiving waters ahead. When the James Caird launched into the Drake Passage, the 6-man crew selected for this desperate mission immediately confronted monstrous conditions. Towering 40-foot waves dwarfed their tiny craft, each swell threatening destruction. The constant crash of water against their fragile hull created a terrifying percussion, a death knell they fought with every ounce of strength. The men established a continuous rotation for bailing water, their hands raw and bleeding from the constant exposure to frigid seawater. The boat groaned and flexed beneath them, its wooden frame creaking with ominous tension against forces it was never designed to withstand. The physical toll was immense. Hurricane-force winds screamed around them like wounded animals, while freezing temperatures sent shooting pains through frost-bitten fingers and toes. The men's clothes, perpetually soaked with icy spray, became frozen carapaces that chafed against skin already rubbed raw by salt. Their water supplies became contaminated with salt spray, each sip burning their cracked lips and parched throats, intensifying their dehydration. "We are the fools who could not see that this was impossible," Shackleton reportedly told his second-in-command Frank Worsley during a moment of stark honesty, before immediately returning to the steady, confident demeanor that sustained his men's spirits through the ordeal. Navigation presented another layer of difficulty. They relied solely on a sextant for celestial navigation, requiring clear skies in the perpetually cloudy Southern Ocean. The crew managed a single crucial sighting during a momentary clearing, providing their only position fix during the entire 16-day journey. Each mile represented another test of both the James Caird's structural integrity and the crew's will to survive. Hour by hour, they fought to keep their heading despite currents that constantly threatened to push them off course and into the open ocean, where certain death awaited. When they finally sighted South Georgia Island after more than 2 weeks at sea, dangerous currents and rocky shorelines forced them to crash onto the island's remote southern shore, opposite from the whaling stations where help waited. The James Caird, their faithful vessel, splintered against the rocks during landing, the sickening crunch of breaking timber marking the end of one journey and the beginning of another equally perilous challenge. Standing on the shore, looking at their destroyed lifeboat, Shackleton faced a crushing realization. After surviving the impossible sea crossing, they now stood on the wrong side of an unexplored, mountainous island with no hope of sailing further. "We've come this far," he told his exhausted companions. "We cannot fail now." This moment of determination, when failure seemed most certain, epitomizes Shackleton's extraordinary leadership under pressure. Shackleton selected 2 companions to accompany him across South Georgia's unexplored interior, a mountainous terrain challenging for experienced alpinists with proper equipment. The 3 men had no climbing gear and only makeshift crampons fashioned from screws taken from the James Caird. For 36 grueling hours, they traversed glaciers and scaled ice-covered peaks. When they staggered into the Stromness whaling station, their appearance was so transformed that station personnel initially couldn't recognize them. Without delay, Shackleton organized rescue missions for the remaining men. After several failed attempts hindered by ice conditions, Shackleton finally reached Elephant Island aboard a Chilean vessel. He found all 22 men alive, having survived for over 4 months in one of the world's most inhospitable environments. Against astronomical odds, all 28 members of the original expedition survived an ordeal stretching nearly 2 years. What elevates Shackleton's crossing above other maritime survival stories is the deliberate nature of his gamble. Unlike many Drake Passage disasters befalling well-equipped ships caught by surprise, Shackleton consciously launched a woefully inadequate vessel into waters renowned for destroying ships many times larger. Equally remarkable was Shackleton's psychological management throughout the ordeal. By maintaining routines, distributing rations with scrupulous fairness, and consistently projecting confidence in their ultimate rescue, he prevented the despair that might have undermined their collective will to survive. For scientific leadership, give me Scott. For swift and efficient travel, Amundsen. But when you are in a hopeless situation, when there seems no way out, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton, wrote polar explorer Sir Raymond Priestley, a testament to leadership that transformed certain tragedy into triumph against impossible odds. A century after Shackleton's desperate crossing, The Drake Passage continues to challenge human survival, but now attracts scientists rather than just explorers. What makes the world's most dangerous waters so scientifically valuable that researchers willingly risk their lives? The passage has revealed itself to be much more than a maritime hazard. It's actually functioning as the planet's thermostat in ways we're only beginning to understand.